It's time for the biggest story of the day. This is what made the cut with JJ and Alex on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Trajan Wealth brings you this portion of the program. TRAJANwealth.com. That's Trajan Wealth for all your trusted local needs in retirement. Mitch Harper, he's nowhere near retirement, and so he doesn't need Trajan Wealth, but he does. Even on a Monday, got to keep your head on a swivel. Mitch, we got the news that it's official that Jake Retzlaff is taking his talents to Tulane. Going to walk on there after withdrawing from BYU. I think that at the very least, there's a little bit of a feeling of putting a bow on the story. But JJ and I were talking about this. I don't know if there's a fan base quite like BYU who will really obsessively probably follow Jake Retzlaff's career the rest of this 1 year that he has left in eligibility. But what are your thoughts on him going to the Green Wave?
It's an interesting landing spot, and seeing him post on Instagram, roll wave, it's just kind of surreal because just a few months ago he was at the BYU Student Athlete Building talking about how he wants to be a Heisman Trophy finalist for BYU, and now he's going to be in a new uniform, and he pulled it off and found a way to find the landing spot. And when you dive deep into Tulane's quarterback situation, they've had a whirlwind of issues where they're leaning into the portal, where everyone in that quarterback unit is a portal addition. It could be a spot where he goes in and could potentially be that QB1 for a program that's won, 32 games the last 3 years, including a 9-win season last year. So I think it was a positive outcome for really everyone involved, because 2 months ago today, it looked really bleak to the point where was Jake Retzlaff even going to play any football at all in his career? And now he's got a landing spot at a program that's got a little bit of winning tradition the last couple of years and has proven themselves one of the best programs in the group of six.
Well, it feels like we've got full and complete closure on that era of BYU football. And I don't even like calling it an era. It's kind of weird. He's only here for 2 years.
Yeah.
But what do we make of the Jake Retzlaff era at BYU?
He quarterbacked one of the greatest seasons in BYU football history. And for that, he's always going to have a role as far as, his impact on the program. Now, you're not going to discuss him as one of the, all-time greats at BYU. He's not even, a top 10 quarterback at BYU all time. But, he's a QB that gave BYU the breakthrough in believing they can win in a power conference. And the 2024 team for BYU is, I think, a top 5 team all time in BYU football history. And, he wasn't the sole reason for that success. It wasn't, video game numbers like, BYU fans have seen from elite quarterbacks in some of the great seasons in BYU football history. But it was a very productive year with some big moments from Jake, some down moments as well that Kansas picked. But there was also moments where he's, leading BYU on a game-winning drive and putting them in a position to get a game-winning field goal against Utah, and then just the game-winning touchdown against Oklahoma State. That's all-time stuff. So I think, as time goes by and his messaging, too, in his farewell post to BYU, you would think on the surface that relationship is fine, and that, maybe down the road he could, come back for a reunion or whatever it may be, because that's the type of team, last year's squad, that will be remembered, because it gives BYU that proof of concept to their, future recruits and players that, they can win in the Big 12. They can be competitive at a high level nationally in the week in, week out grind of one of these leagues. And he was the guy that really kind of got that started for BYU last season.
Mitch, one of the things that, again, we were talking about how I think I don't know if there's a fan base who's more interested in a guy, leaving the school and what they do afterward. And I don't think there's hard feelings there. I think people are interested in what they're going to do at Tulane and what he can do. But it is like I was reading about their quarterback room, and you thought there was a big quarterback battle in Provo. Jake Retzlaff is going to have to go through like a half dozen people, knock out a half dozen people who have all transferred from other places to be able to get that starting spot there. But is there a feeling of, okay, now they can not have to worry about this, put a period at the end of that Jake Retzlaff sentence and focus on these guys? I think they have been, but now they can officially just be like, all right, that's in the past. Let's figure this thing out going forward.
Definitely. And really, this is, I think, the win-win for everyone involved. I think this was, because if he had to have, say, go to the courts to get an extra year of eligibility, I mean, that would have just brought everything up again. And now everyone should just move forward. It's going to be a conversation. I want to hear from, coaches and players, some real, detailed thoughts on day one of camp of, this Jake Retzlaff situation, because now it's all out there in the open. He's found a landing spot. Instead of just pointing to statements and referring to that, give some actual thoughts of what their viewpoints of the impact he had and what this offseason has truly been. They talked about it at Big 12 Media Day, but it was still kind of like, we'll let Jake make his comment and this and that, and kind of trying to dance around things officially. Well, now it's all out there and just officially move forward and bring closure to that. And then they can just settle into the season. And for Jake, he gets a chance to, he's got some games with Northwestern in week 1. They got a trip at Ole Miss. And then the American Conference, if he can get on a run, maybe, put himself on maybe some NFL radars if he has success. I mean, it'd be quite impressive to go a week, and if like 10 days before training camp and emerge potentially as a QB1. But I mean, it's almost peak college football in 2025 when you look at Tulane's quarterback situation of how that's constructed, and we'll see if it's going to work. I think you're right that I think every Cougar fan is going to be fascinated to see how he plays. And, is it a situation where he takes his game to an even higher level and it leaves BYU fans wondering what could have been had he been at BYU in 2025, or does he just, look like the QB maybe he was in 2023 where it was a lot of losses piling up. It's going to be a fascinating story, but it's going to be more focused on ball rather than legal matters and things like that. And I think everyone can appreciate that.
And the second camp opens up. It's going to be all about who's going to be the starting quarterback for BYU in 2025. And we all know who the contenders are. And earlier on in the show, we had a beat writer for Stanford, Ben Parker from Rivals.com on the show. And we brought up Bear Bachmeier, and he talked a lot about him, how he was going to be in consideration for the starting job at Stanford this year. Is he really in the mix at BYU? Is Bear Bachmeier somebody we could actually see win that job this fall for the Cougars?
Definitely. He needs to be, because he's got a skill set that, Aaron Roderick in this offense feel like he can be a fit, and he's one of the big attributes with the Bachmeier brothers in general is that they are quick learners. They're smart. They can learn and they should be able to learn this playbook. And, he arrived in late May. He should be given every opportunity because, what we saw from McKay Hillstead and Trayson Bourget, there's been moments from those guys last fall camp and this past spring, but nothing again that screamed, these are clear-cut, carry the program, QB1s. And, if BYU didn't have a track record of a strong quarterback play, maybe you just feel comfortable moving forward with those guys. But BYU's best seasons with A-Rod as the OC, it's been an NFL caliber quarterback or a guy that is dual threat and can make plays happen, like Jake Retzlaff. And, Zach Wilson and Jaron Hall, BYU knows what a good quarterback looks like. And, and I think there's a high standard of what that should be. And, Bear Bachmeier is a case of being just the new guy. Everyone's fascinated to see what he can bring in BYU's quarterback unit. But, yes, I mean, they've got to give him opportunity to contend for this job. I think he deserves that because, again, we saw nothing from spring to the point where Aaron Roderick wanted to anoint one of the guys, Bourget or Hillstead, as the clear-cut number 2. I mean, in retrospect, had Roderick named a backup, probably could have been easier now to just say the starter is there, because they had a clear-cut backup winner. The lack of a defined winner in that backup spot, really creates a dynamic now where it creates an opening for Bear Bachmeier to shine. And one of the things about him is, again, that just the praise is that he is smart, and off the field, that's going to be huge. But I think someone like Trayson Bourget is interesting because, he really loves BYU. He's really inserted himself. If you would talk about the love and learn culture that Kalani preaches, I think he embodies that. And Hillstead, I think, it's an excellent athlete, probably the best of the bunch. So I think there's an argument to make for all three. And unlike other quarterback battles under Kalani and A-Rod, where you felt like, okay, it's a battle, but this guy's probably going to be the guy, there's a real case for all three. And I think that the nice thing for BYU is that they don't have this weight of the world that they need to find the future face of the program in these three, because ultimately that's going to be Ryder Lyons. It has to be Ryder Lyons. But these three, if they can be a placeholder until then and keep the momentum going where you're still putting together strong seasons, I think that's all you can ask for. To expect any of these three on such short notice to just deliver a 10, 11-win season, I mean, could it happen? Sure. But the nice thing for BYU and the staff is that they've got the blue chip waiting in the wings down the road. These guys just got to keep the momentum going, and I think that everything can, the program can continue to move forward. So I think that's a unique dynamic in all of this where, all the momentum won't be lost if this team goes to 7-5 because of what they're doing on the recruiting trail and what's in that quarterback pipeline with the 5-star and Ryder Lyons.
Wouldn't it be something when BYU hosts Stanford on September 6th at 8:15 p.m. if Bear Bachmeier rolls out there as a starting quarterback against his former team?
Throws a touchdown to his brother?
Oh, my gosh.
It would be an incredible storyline, and I just, and he's the guy that wants to wear number 47, and I think, what's interesting, too, with this QB battle, I think it's hard to kind of gauge even just the pulse of the fans, what they want, because I think, like everyone, we're all trying to learn as much as we can on these guys, because it's a small sample size of what we've truly witnessed from Bourguet and Hillstead, and with Bachmeier, it's diving into huddle film and sizing up all of that. But, I think in a perfect world, Bachmeier takes off and really, emerges as that clear-cut guy. But he's got to be, to me, outstanding to be that QB1 in week 1, week 2. But at the same time, I think that, Roderick and Kalani Sitake, they've shown a tendency that they will let this QB, kind of lead the team and have that comfort of not looking over the shoulder. But to me, if you go with Hillstead or Bourguet or Bachmeier and they're struggling like in that week 1 against Portland State, similar to what we saw 2 years ago against Sam Houston or years ago against Portland State, don't be afraid to make a change. I just think that none of these guys, command, the weight of the program. These coaches were retained. They've got long-term extensions. Brian Santiago has sung their praises. It feels like these coaches have stability. It's not a year where it's win or go home and lose your job. There's stability. Now, you don't want to lose at all what you built at 11-2. But if someone's struggling in week 1 and he emerged as that starter to begin out of camp, don't be afraid to make the change. I mean, I think all three of these guys got to have potentially a role in this season and got to be ready on any moment's notice to play. So even if someone does take that first snap, to me, all three of these guys got to be ready because you got to be willing to make that change with how short a notice this quarterback room changed with the timing of it all, with Retzlaff, being out basically after May, when that lawsuit dropped, and then it officially happening earlier this month. You've got to have be ready for any one of these three guys to have to play.
Mitch, you saw the wild, historic number thrown out there by Memphis to try to buy their way into the Big 12. How, per your view, was that supposed to work? Was it $250 million or $200 million of yearly sponsorship that they'd be bringing in, or like over 10 years that they'd be bringing in, or where did that $200 million come from? And a guy like Brett Yormark, and obviously you need the member institutions to sign off on this kind of thing, but they were very quick to say, thank you so much for your interest, Memphis, but no thank you. This is money's always been a big part of what Brett Yormark is trying to do to keep this league competitive. So why not Memphis?
It's kind of blows your mind that concept of buying your way into a league. I honestly thought, the reporting from Ross Dellinger, I mean, I'll give him credit. I mean, that piece that he noted about a no-risk offer from Memphis where, they could be basically kicked out of the league after the media rights are over if they're not providing value to the Big 12. If that's really the case, I'm the Big 12. I take this offer. I take the money because Memphis has got a really good basketball program, and the Big 12 prides itself and Brett Yormark on its basketball property. Build that up. Football is like okay, but I mean, since 2014, and I point to that because that was their turnaround year, and BYU faced them. The last 11 years, they've been consistently an 8 to 9 win team, and they've even had a New Year's Six bowl. I mean, they don't have a great fan base. I would imagine it's like a 30,000 seat stadium, but I mean, if you can get that cash infusion and they got a really good basketball program that kind of fits with what the Big 12 likes, why not? And they're putting it out there that you could boot them after 2031 if they're not providing the value. I mean, that just kind of blows me away. But, hey, that's college sports today, and who knows what this league looks like after 2031. Why not take the cash and maybe get a program that adds even more value, who's not taking any money from the $31.5 million that each of these teams are going to be getting starting this year from ESPN and Fox. I thought it was interesting, and I think it's one that maybe the Big 12, I know that there's been reports that the board of directors are not interested, but I think could be really kind of interesting and maybe something that will be worth looking at again down the road, and maybe expand it out to 18 and bring in a UConn or something. And I mean, that might be, but I just think that the Big 12's just got to continue to think differently. And I think they've done that so far with Brett Yormark as he enters year 4. But I mean, if there was truly a clause to boot them after 2031, kind of like, because the only program that I can think of that's ever done that was Temple when they were in the Big East back in the day. There's really no other college program that's just getting booted from a league. If you had that clause in there, I say you do that. You do that deal, and you take that cash and then evaluate it after the 5 years.
And as soon as it doesn't work, you're out of here.
Yeah,
penny.
Yeah.
But what I found more interesting than the fact that Memphis was willing to spend $200 million to join the conference is the fact that $12.5 million per member is just a drop in the bucket. It's not enough to move the needle for the teams in the league to say, okay, you can join us. It's just not enough to get them interested. Yeah. That's what does that say about college sports in 2025?
It's crazy, and it just makes you I think if you're a place like BYU, you hope that long term the Big 12 is stable, and because right now it's on great footing and it's under contract till 2031, because the last thing you want to do is one day have to try to buy your way into a conference, or is this what it's going to be one day? I mean, I remember last couple weeks ago at Big 12 Media Day, Kyle Whittingham talking about how he believes everything's going to maybe consolidate to one big league or organization. Do you have to buy your way into that if you're not one of the chosen television properties that the media partners love and will always put on spotlight roles? Do you have to buy your way in? That's, to me, how I kind of looked at this story, is that long term, is this now what it's going to take for a program that's not viewed as just, again, the chosen one, as I would say, to buy your way into being whatever the properties are going to be, or the alignments are going to be in the future of college athletics. It really sets an interesting trend, and it started with SMU, and then Stanford and Cal took lesser shares, and Oregon and Washington took they're not on equal shares in the Big Ten. That's what it seems like it's trending towards, where you got to buy your way to be in these leagues and pay out huge amount of dollars to make it happen.
Well, Mitch, we've stolen a lot of time from me on a Monday. But, hey, we've got breaking stuff that's been happening all around us, even during what we call our slow season normally. So when we start really getting into our Big 12 season, we start really getting into all the talk with BYU. Of course, we're going to be hitting you up a ton, and looking forward to all the coverage we're going to be getting from you on KSLSports.com and on Cougar Tracks. And then First and 12 is back, baby. Let's get this thing going again, man.
I cannot wait. 8 days. BYU will report to camp on the 29th, and then fall camp kicks off on July 30th. So we're 9 days away, and football season's back.
Let's go.
Let's
Mitch,
go.
We appreciate it, man. We'll talk to you again.
Okay, see you guys.
There you go. Mitch Harper. Maybe one of my favorite people in the building, by the way. Like, he's just fun to work with, on top of the fact that, like, he just – it's hardly work for him because there's a lot of stuff. He just covers this
He's
stuff
really
so
good
well.
at what he does,
yeah.
And he's also fun to have on to talk about it.